What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we are going over Jeremiyah Love possibly going to the New York Giants at 5. It has been rumored in the last 2 days that the Giants are super high on Jeremiyah Love. Who wouldn't be? And we're going to talk about, is it smoke? And we are also going to talk about, do I think that would be a bad pick? We're going to get into it all. First thing I want to say is we discussed this Giant pick at 5 numerous times on this podcast, and I think the Giants are slotted perfectly at pick 5. For me, I think that's almost as good as the number 1 pick because when we look at who the Giants would take at 5 compared to who they would take even if they had the number 1 pick, I think the same guys will be there at 5. When we look at the Giants and their strengths as a team, they have their quarterback and their strongest unit is their front 7. And when we look at everybody going before the Giants pick, most likely, when you look at it for Fernando Mendoza, again, I like Jackson Dart better than him. I don't think they would need Fernando Mendoza again on that team. I know there was rumors last year about them possibly trading Jackson Dart, selecting Fernando Mendoza. I don't think that would have ever happened. Then there's going to be 2 edge rushers when you look at an Avril Reese and a David Bailey. Maybe the Giants would have took them if they were at that pick, but I still don't really think so because they have so much depth on their front 7. And then possibly Francis Mauigoa will go before that pick. I don't really think the Giants would go tackle either. Again, it would be a possibility. So all the guys that are going to be at the Giants pick at 5 are possibly who they would have took at the number 1 pick anyway. When we look at the Giants, and we talked about this on our channel last week or 2 weeks ago, I really thought this pick was going to come down to the 2 Ohio State guys. When you look at a Caleb Downs and you look at a Cardinal Tate, those are the 2 guys that I think would be slotted at the pick. I think it makes sense. 2 blue chip NFL talents, but not only that, 2 positions of need that you could say for the New York Giants. When you look at their team, their defense, their secondary was the weakest part. Caleb Downs, I talk about time and time again, I think he's the best player in this NFL draft. I think he's a Swiss Army knife. I think he's so versatile that value at the position doesn't even matter. If this is a guy that you think that's going to wear a gold jacket one day, positional value should not matter. And then when you also look at Cardinal Tate, again, you could really put yourself in a spot where you think the Giants could use a Cardinal Tate. Again, best receiver in the draft. Where he's coming from, we know, is a pipeline for NFL receivers. But not only that, the questions of if they're going to sign Wan'Dale Robinson, add another weapon in that offense for Jackson Dart. Again, definitely somebody that could be picked at number 5 for the Giants. Now, like I said, in the last 2 days, Jeremiyah Love has been rumored to be going to number 5 for the New York Giants. And I'm going to talk about whether if this is a good move, bad move. Do I think the Giants should do this? First off, I'm going to say this. There's been a debate for me personally whether Caleb Downs or Jeremiyah Love is the best player in this draft class. And again, I would still go Caleb Downs because I've been riding for that for the last 365 days. But I do think there's a case for Jeremiyah Love for sure. I do think Jeremiyah Love is a better prospect than Ashton Jeanty was last year. I know that's crazy. So many people say hindsight's 2020. Ashton Jeanty didn't have a good year. But I also said last year that Ashton Jeanty might be a little overhyped as a top 10 pick because, again, I said Omar Hampton, Traven Henderson could end up having a better career than he is. He didn't really show much as a pass catcher at Boise State. And again, a lot of people were hyped at the historic season he had, and it was an historic season at that. But again, with the Mountain West, with his schedule, there could be some debate there, again, as the prospect he was. And I just think Jeremiyah Love is more elusive, and I think he's way better as a pass catcher than Ashton Jeanty. Jeremiyah Love is a complete running back prospect. There's no doubt about it. He could do everything, like I said, running between the tackles. He's elusive. He could catch the ball again in the modern-day NFL. I think he's an elite pass catcher. I think he strives on being an elite pass catcher. Now I want to talk about should the Giants select him. Do I think this would be a bad move? I'm going to say this. With as complete as a prospect as Jeremiyah Love is, and at the position he plays, how fast it could translate to the NFL, he is the only guy in this draft where if you're a middle-of-the-pack team, if you're a team where you think you could make a huge jump in a year, he's the one guy that could accelerate this process. That's why I don't think it would be a bad pick at all for the Giants to take him. He's an elite prospect, and he could accelerate you to a playoff team in year 1. Don't think it would be a bad pick at all for New York Giants, and I do think it could be real. Now, do I think it's smoke? That's kind of tough to say because I do think when you look, like I said, at a Caleb Downs and you look at a Cardinal Tate, those guys definitely are more positions of need. But at the same time, it would not be insane for the Giants to select Jeremiyah Love because, like I said, with how elite of a talent he is, with how fast this team wants to accelerate their process, he's the one guy to do that. And then you also look at the guys that would be behind him, Cam Scatterbo, Tyron Tracy, are those guys that are really long-term answers at the running back position. When you look at Cam Scatterbo, I get it. He came in the league very hot. Obviously, he's a glue guy, a locker room guy. But at the same time, with the way he plays, do you really want to play a guy like Cam Scatterbo every single down? I don't think so. He's also coming off a very gruesome injury. Then when you look at Tyron Tracy, again, this guy's a secondary running back. This guy's long-term future on his team, maybe 2 years. Again, not a long-term answer on running back. This isn't a team that has, a running back one that's going to be a running back for the next 5 years. Jeremiyah Love, like I said, is that elite of a talent, and at the position he plays, would be the one guy that could accelerate the Giants from maybe fringe playoff team to being a middle-of-the-pack playoff team in the NFC in year one. He's that elite and could translate to be one of the best players in the NFL in year one. I don't think it's that far off for the Giants to take him, like I said. The one thing I do want to discuss with Jeremiyah Love that I think is getting completely overlooked and nobody is talking about, because this is what I do on this channel, talk about stuff that nobody is talking about. Jeremiyah Love has a rare usage rate for players coming into the NFL in their final years. Let's look at the last 5 players that were selected in the top 10 as running backs and talk about their carries in their final years. When we look at National Jetty last year, at pick 6, 374 carries. When we look at Bijan Robinson at pick 8, 258 carries with another NFL running back behind him. When we look at Saquon Barkley at Penn State, pick 2, 217 carries. Leonard Fournette, pick 4, 129 carries, but only played 7 games. Christian McCaffrey, a guy that chews more as a receiver than anything, 253 carries. You know how many carries Jeremiyah Love had last year? Only 199 carries. And we know running backs are like cars. The less miles you have, the more valuable you are. So you could argue Jeremiyah Love as a running back in the top 10 is more valuable than any running back we've ever seen get drafted in the top 10. Jeremiyah Love has a rare usage rate, and he's that versatile as a running back where he could translate as one of the top players in the NFL in year one. I don't think it would be a stretch by any means for the Giants to draft him because, like I said, this is the only guy in this draft class with the position he plays and how elite of a prospect he is that could accelerate this team in year one to a true playoff team, to a true playoff contender. And like I said, positional value does not matter if you could see this guy wearing a gold jacket one day. And I think Jeremiyah Love is phenomenal. He's him. Again, like I said, that usage rate was also so rare because how often do you see a running back playing on an independent schedule with also the second best running back in the class behind him? So again, we say this time and time again with running backs, it's quality touches over quantity touches. If you're a true NFL draft prospect, you don't need 250 to 300 carries to prove that. Jeremiyah Love only had 200 carries this year, and again, he's going to get drafted in the top 10. I've also never seen somebody in New York, again, for the Heisman ceremony, have under 200 carries. That's absolutely absurd to me. Jeremiyah Love is him. I don't think it would be a stretch by any means for the Giants to take him. But if I had to rank the 3 guys in order for the Giants to take at pick 5, I would go Caleb Downs 1, honestly, because I think he's the best player in this draft. I think it's more of a position of need than Jeremiyah Love. Then, honestly, I would go Jeremiyah Love, too, because I think when you talk about in terms of impact and where this Giants team is at, he's the one guy that could accelerate this team to a true playoff team in 1 year, like I've been mentioning on this pod. And then I would go Cardinal Tate 3, just because, again, I think receivers in the first round are a dime a dozen. There's 2 to 4 elite receiver prospects every year. And then when you talk about in terms of value at that pick, like I said, to take Cardinal Tate, who I do think is the number 1 receiver on the board at pick 5, and then say the last receiver at the top 3 goes at pick 15, 16, I do think, again, you're kind of losing out and bang for your buck at that pick. And then even Denzel Boston, the 4th receiver, going 20 to 25, I don't think there's that much far off than Cardinal Tate getting picked at pick 5. So that's why I have Cardinal Tate at 3. But again, another weapon in this offense alongside Malik Nabers. I do still think that would be a great pick. And like I continuously said, I don't think the Giants can go wrong at this pick. I think you're choosing between 3 elite blue chip prospects. And again, 3 guys that you would have possibly picked at pick 1 anyway. Pick 5 is as good as pick 1 basically for the Giants. So again, Jeremiyah Love, I do think it is a little bit of smoke just because, again, it isn't necessarily the biggest vision of need for the Giants. But if they were to select Jeremiyah Love, I don't think it would be a bad pick at all. Jeremiyah Love is an elite prospect, a guy you could argue as the best player in this year's NFL draft. And like I continue to say on this pod, a guy that could accelerate this Giants team to a playoff team in year one. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Drop down below what you think of Jeremiyah Love going to the New York Giants. Do you think this is smoke, or do you think Jeremiyah Love can actually go at pick 5? That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and we are